Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah. My name is Khalid Muhammad Ariff from Sekitar Synergies near Mohd. Thank you, YouTube. Thank you, subscribers. Thank you, viewers. Alhamdulillah, I'm blessed with another day in my life into 15 of Rabi'ul Awal 1442. Today is the second of November. And today we are going to look into a process which is a printing activity. It could be carton box printing activity process, or books or newspapers, regardless, as long as it is a printing industry. We'll take a look and try to link safety, health, and environment so that the entire three major areas of our concern is being managed in one management system. That would be my ultimate aim doing this video for you. And for my Muslims brothers and sisters, please do not watch my video when you are in the mosque listening to the khatib in the Friday prayers, and also if you are in any religious events and lessons where you have got scholars reciting the books of religious or what in Malay we call it kitab muktabar. Please do not watch this video. Okay, if you're ready, let's go into the printing process. I have a picture before you, and let's take a look. This is a printing industry. It's a common industry, and it has been around for many years. And in the printing industry, it involves printing machines. It involves printing equipments of all sizes, shapes, and it involves especially the use of pigments, which they blend with solvent to produce the color that is desired for the order they received from clients. And all these coloring mixtures are done, and then they have got the mixing of solvent and pigments in ink formulation room, and a lot of solvent is being used, and therefore they have got all these photographic plates, rollers, tubes, all sorts of instruments to ensure they're able to print a very good printing quality. All right, there are various types of printing, offset, in all this. That is not my expertise. My concern from the parts of environmental management is to ensure that all the environmental aspects involved in the printing industry is being managed well. And in this video, we will try to relate safety, health, and environment from this printing activity. For an environmental resource person like me, our main concern would be all the environmental aspects involved in this activity. And we will try to I will try to relate it to safety and health, but I am not the expert in safety and health. And if you are SHO, industrial hygienists, safety managers, or other resource persons who are well versed in safety and health, please correct me if I'm wrong, and please comment if you have got additional important information to be shared by those who need this knowledge anywhere in the world. Okay, let us begin. My concern, one of the well, of course, there are a lot of popular environmental aspects here. It could be the machines itself, all the components, parts, and trays, all this the sludges, ink, a lot, an array of them that which are environmental aspects, and we need to manage them. I pick one, this one, discarded ink. Where do you find this? Probably in the ink formulation or mixing activity or room. Also, you can find this ink, it could be in the form of balance after the printing work is completed. You've got some balance of printing ink. Therefore, the discarded ink could be ink which has newly been formulated, but it becomes off spec and it's not needed. That is another kind of discarded ink, or maybe people put the term waste ink, which is off spec ink. Secondly, it could be left over from the printing activity. You've got ink, which is still in the dispensing container involved in this machine, around this machine, and it's for topping up of ink whenever the machine is running. And those ink are actually still good, except that it's not wanted. And there is another version of discarded ink where all this ink is being stored. Unwanted ink or off-spec ink is being stored for a while, and what happened is due to the binder and the hardener, which is being part of the drying component or drying constituent of the ink, it becomes cured, or in other words, hardened. That is another version of discarded ink. And well, we'll stick to the term discarded ink. I believe most of you understand this. Therefore, how is discarded ink here from the environmental aspect nature over here would affect safety element of this activity? Take a look. This is the core element, safety. Now, discarded ink, if you have been to printing industry machines, I believe you have observed that some of the ink is being left idle and some open. And therefore, the fact that it does contain volatile chemicals, namely solvent, it could be xylene, it could be toluene, and naphthalene, and many others, better than I do, some even in the form of ketones. Well, these are different types and different varieties of ink, of solvent that have been used. And there is an activity, physical. There is some amount, substantial vapor pressure in this chemical called solvent, and you can literally smell fumes whenever you enter the room, the mixing room, or even when you're walking around these machines, you could smell the presence of solvent. Those would pose, some potential hazard. Now, SHO, please add up. I'm not the expert, as I said, and this vapor, due to the nature of these chemicals, it can develop some form of, upon prolonged, I believe, upon prolonged exposure to human, prolonged inhalation, especially is a confined space when you talk about the paint mixing room or even the printing line here. They got to ensure no dirt enters the place because they don't want to ruin their printing products. So it is literally a confined area, and that might lead to some form of intoxication or could be respiratory issues. All right, industrial hygienists, you know what it is. It could be expedience, so that would be the potential hazard down here, and causing health issues. And when a person is having, is intoxicated, he might knock over some, or walk around and knock over some sharp edges, if you could take a look, and injure himself, and he has got to be addressed in medical terms. Therefore, rescue and dressing of wounds has got to be addressed, and that would release a substantial amount of environmental aspects in the form of medical waste. Gorge could be blood and all sorts of things. You can imagine that. That is relation one round, and let's go to the other way around. The discarded ink can pose health problem because of that nature of chemicals, and personnel could be intoxicated with that. And when a person is in a state of discomfort working, intoxication, he could be suffering from nerve some form of numbness in the limbs, perhaps prolonged exposure to solvent. I've read this journal before and seen the person himself, and that would lead to some disarray in terms of compliance to safety procedures, and that would also lead to accidental spillage and all these environmental aspects involving ink would be spilled all over the floor and causing environmental problems, and it is known as environmental impact. Therefore, that would be a simple link in simple terms from a layman like me. And let's take a look at the environmental management part of the link between safety, health, and environment management systems. I am viewing that we are interested in integrating safety, health, and environment management system and plus quality perhaps in one management system. Let's take a look at the environmental aspect. One example, remember, there's an exhaustive list of environmental aspects. So I just choose one of them, which is discarded ink. The word discarded means it is not wanted, one, but in environmental management, the word discarded is the fact that this particular environmental aspect is coming out of this activity. It is being released. It is being discharged. Therefore, it is an output environmental aspect. So please remember, when you're doing ISO 14001, please remember you are able to identify input and output, because the associated environmental impact to aspects which are in the form of output and aspects which are in the form of input is rather different. So in this case, it is an output environmental aspect. Therefore, from the life cycle perspective, we got to look downstream from this process. After the release of discarded ink, what happened to it? That is downstream of its life cycle. Therefore, discarded ink, if it is in liquid form, it might be spilled, the container might be washed, and we have spent solvent now flowing as effluent and would cause uh, the contamination of factory internal drainage system, or perhaps it would go into an effluent drain into an industrial effluent treatment system. Therefore, the environmental impact there, even though it is being treated, it does contain some level of chemical oxygen demand, and after it's being released from the industrial effluent treatment system or wastewater treatment system as popularly known, can cause water pollution. And this discarded ink, as it is left idle or as it is being washed away to recover the printing utensil, the jiggers, the tubes, the plates, all this washing. And also this discarded ink could be handled, stored. It would have some vapor pressure and would cause the release of air pollutant into the air. Therefore, the residual volatile organic carbon, we call it, can enter the atmosphere and cause air pollution. Spillage definitely on the ground would cause soil contamination. Nonetheless, if it is originating from the perhaps industrial effluent treatment systems, say filter press, sludge cake coming out from that, and there's a potential of spillage that would cause soil contamination, or if it is being managed very well and it would be sent to perhaps a sanitary landfill or secure landfill, that in turn would cause contaminant to be infiltrating the soil structure of those secured landfill or sanitary landfill, causing what is called ground pollution or soil pollution. That's it. Downstream of uh, discarded ink. Now let's take a look at something else quite common here. Let's take a look at this one, solvent. When I use the word solvent in my work, it refers to fresh solvent. When the solvent is being used, we would call it spent solvent or used solvent or dirty solvent that is actually being used, or waste solvent. We can do that. But to make our work simple but accurate at the same time, if it is a fresh solvent, we would resort to the term solvents. If you want to be specific by saying benzene or xylene, go ahead, which is better because the characters could be different. Now, solvent, when it comes into this machine, it is in the form of input environmental aspect. Therefore, its associated probable impact to the environment shall be viewed from the upstream of its life cycle. Solvent is petrochemical product. Solvent is oil and gas product. So upstream, the more demand for solvent, the more demand for oil and gas products, the more demand for crude oil, the more demand for oil drilling. The more drilling is done, what happened? Fossil fuel. Fossil fuel is an environmental resource. So the demand is high, demand and supply, not only the price is higher, but also in environmental concern, it is the depletion of these resources. Therefore, the environmental impact associated to solvent as input aspect is resource depletion. On top of that, as I usually mention, it would cause some geological damage in the drilling area, in the well itself, cavity, some encasement, although it is being replaced with mud, but we have damaged the geological structure over there. Okay, that's one. Another environmental aspect of concern is a fresh ink, which is just being formulated. Okay, what does it say? Fresh ink. What is it? What is it made of? Oh, pigments. Huh? And most pigments are petrochemical based. Some are natural but very expensive. Extracts from fruits, plants, and other things. And yeah, and we got pigment from them. And but the cheaper version is petrochemical because a vast amount can be produced in a unit time as compared to the natural resources. So pigment, you've got ink, you've got binder, you got lead creoate, perhaps some chemicals involved, and a few other chemicals, and all of these are petrochemical in nature. Some are natural, some are mineral. So when you look at the input, we look at fresh ink, it is actually an input aspect in this activity. Therefore, in order to determine its associated environmental impact is to look at fresh ink from the life cycle perspective upstream. In other words, it's where it comes from. Where does it originate? Okay, natural resources naturally, and that would cause the depletion of natural resources, and we call it resource depletion over here, is a global term, and can cause a lot of damage to our geological structure. We damage the earth by using all these materials that we grab rapaciously from the natural resources. We are the ardent uh, consumer or eater of fossil fuel, haven't we? Aren't we? Okay, so there's an associated risk to this process, this particular environmental aspect actually, and this process. Of course, discarded ink is in this country scheduled waste, and it has got a tremendous, humongous amount of legal liability, and people are struggling and to ensure compliance. And there's another risk that this particular this discarded ink contains some toxic elements, and it has got to be managed. It cannot be allowed to spill or dump in the ground, without prior attention, without having it secured or stabilized. It will cause environmental contamination in long term. It would cause a lot of ecological damage in the what do you call inhabitants of the ecosystem, changes in food chain, prey predator chain, changes in reproductive behavior, or even reproductive impairment amongst lower trophic levels of the ecological system. And of course, handling of discarded waste is actually associated to spillage during handling, human error mostly. That would be a safety concern, but the environmental concern is the spillage can cause environmental contamination. And on top of that, there is opportunity. I love this part because I love to think about what we can do with all this so-called waste, which I call potential renewed resources. And I'm expecting younger people to be able to think at a higher level compared to my generation, and to look into alternative use of all this discarded paint. What I have done is, instead of sending it for scheduled waste management, we would use a spent solvent to mix all this paint and reuse the paint in some facility huts belonging to perhaps poultry farms, and paint some of the bridges or buildings, whatever. It's not becoming waste at all. And it gets cured end of the day. By the way, it is ink, or it could be paint. We can use it. Even paint, most of the time I deploy paint. And we can have perhaps a better printing technique. Now it's all electronics. I believe less printing is done, but nonetheless, the human nature would want to read and look and read, and they don't quite enjoy online like this, like reading through journals. If I read journals, if I purchase journals from the internet, I would print it out because I want to sit and look, and I've got a few other books around me as a reference. So we would like to physically read. That's why we still have printing. Online, we are facing all this radiation, the light emission. So it's not good for health, actually, looking at laptops. And if I want to view YouTube, I would cast it on our television set, that's how I would be doing it. Another opportunity is to have the ink dispensing system itself to be accurate, so that less waste is being generated. So-called less ink or discarded ink is being generated. So these are all the environmental aspects that we are able to discuss. Now remember, environmental management system is about managing those environmental aspects by fulfilling compliance obligation, not only law, but other agreements with vendors, etc. I will try to do it one of these days, a video for that. And addressing risk and opportunity associated to that particular aspect, including the activities. So that is environmental management system. So how to go about doing it, then we develop the SOPs and work instruction sheets for the matter. Compliance to be able to perform. That will be the main element of the environmental management system, the SOP for our workers to conform and comply, so that we are able to manage those environmental aspects in a form that it would not cause or it would not amount to or eliminate the risk of causing environmental impact. So that's about it for this video. I hope it's good enough for your comprehension and for your further thinking, a higher level. So thank you very much, YouTube. Thank you, viewers. Thank you, subscribers. As a Malay, I wish everybody in Bahasa Melayu semoga dikurniakan apa yang dihajat, dipohon dan dicita-cita, dipelihara daripada bala, bencana, musibah, penyakit serta maksiat, dan dikurniakan kesenangan, keselamatan, kesejahteraan dan kebahagiaan kehidupan di dunia dan di akhirat. Somebody please translate that. And as a Muslim, I wish everybody, wherever you are, whatever your faith is, until we meet in the next video, inshallah. For now, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.